Mushy. This is PPT giving you an Ultra Athletes deck profile, or UA deck profile. And I've been collecting the cards for a while, and the new support came out, and I traded with my friends with that for those, and got some other cards to make it more viable. It's still a very budget and casual deck, and it's pretty fun. So here's the deck profile. I'll also give you a little combo hand, starting hand as well, and basically tell you how these cards function. So we're running 3 UA player managers. If you normal summon or special summon a UA monster, except during the damage step, you can special summon this card from your hand. If this card is special summoned, you can activate one of these effects. Target one card in the field and destroy it, or negate the effects of all face-up monsters on the field to the end of the turn, except for UA monsters. You can only use this effect once per turn. This is super good to pop cards and negate monster effects you don't want on the board. You also run 3 UA Liberal Spikers. You can spell summon this card from your hand by returning one UA monster you control, except for itself. You can only spell summon it once per turn this way. During your opponent's main phase, quick effect, you can shuffle one level 5 or higher UA monster from your hand into the deck. And if you do, spell summon one level 5, spell summon one UA monster with a different name from your deck, then return this card from your hand. You can only activate this effect once per turn. This is super good to get rid of a monster you don't want in your hands and spell summon a different monster than this card, and then get this card back into your hand so you can do it again another time. So that's a really good card. You want to run 3 of those. I also run 2 UA midfielders. I've seen people run 3, and I may even seen one that ran 1, but I've seen plays with 2. So I run 2 minefielders. And you can spell summon this card from your hand by returning one UA monster you control to the hand, except for itself. You can spell summon it once per turn this way. During your either player's turn, you can target one other UA monster you control. Return that face-up monster to the hand. Then spell summon one UA monster from your hand with a different name from that monster. You can only use this effect once per turn. It's really good to get out other UA monsters from your hand as well. Then we're going to the 1-ofs of the UAs. We run 1 UA Perfect Ace. You can spell summon this card from your hand by returning one UA monster you control to your hand, except for itself. You can spell summon one UA monster. You can spell summon 1 UA Perfect Ace once per turn this way. Once per turn during another player's turn, when a card or effect is activated, you can discard one card and negate the activation, and if you do, destroy it. This is a quick effect. This is super good to stop any of your opponent's plays and negate certain combo pieces. 1 UA Blockbacker. You can spell summon this card from your hand by returning one UA monster you control, except for itself. You can spell summon 1 UA Blockbacker once per turn this way. Once per turn, when your opponent spell summons a monster, you can change their battle positions, and if you do, negate their effects. This card's also good to stop your opponent's spell summon plays and effects. Of course, it doesn't work against link monsters, but it's still very valuable to use against everything else. 1 UA Dreadnought Dunker. You can spell summon this card from your hand by returning 1 UA monster you control, set for itself. You can only spell summon itself once per turn this way. If this card attacks a defense position monster, inflict piercing battle damage to your opponent. When this card inflicts battle damage to your opponent, you can target one card on the field and destroy it. So this card, it inflicts battle damage regardless of the positions, and still gets to pop a card when inflicting damage that way. So it's a good 1-of to have in the deck. I also run 1 UA Playmaker. You spell summon this card by returning 1 UA monster you control to your hand, except for itself. You can only spell summon itself once per turn this way. When another UA monster you control declares an attack, you can have this card lose 800 attack. And if you do, the attacking monster gains 800 attack. This card is very good for the deck because you can always return it back to your hand and bring it out next time and reuse its effects with all its attacks back. And yeah, it's a good card to run. Also run 1 UA Mighty Slugger, you can spell summon this card from your hand by returning one UA monster you control, except for itself. You can only spell summon itself once per turn this way. If it attacks your opponent cannot activate cards or effects to the end of the damage step. So this just stops any plays when it attacks, like some of the ancient gear monsters, kind of. One UA Goalkeeper. You can spell summon this card from your hand by returning one UA monster you control to your hand, except for itself. You can spell summon one UA Goalkeeper once per turn this way. Once per turn, during either player's turn, you can target one UA monster you control, including itself. Once per turn, it cannot be destroyed by battle or by card effects. This is a quick effect. This just prevents your opponent from destroying one of your UA monsters that you want to keep on the board. And one UA Rival Rebounder. You can spell summon this card from your hand by returning one UA monster you control to your hand, except for itself. You can only spell summon itself once per turn this way. This card is spell summoned during your opponent's turn or normal summoned. You can spell summon one UA monster from your hand or graveyard, except for itself. You can only activate this effect once per turn. This card is really good to get cards back from the graveyard or from your hand as well. Basically, the UA monsters like to tag out and swap each other out from the field. As you can see, that's what their effects will be doing. I also run these 3 hand traps. Effect Veiler. I don't need to explain why I run Effect Veiler. But during your opponent's main phase, quick effect, you can send this card from your hand to the graveyard to target one effect monster your opponent controls and negate that monster's effects to the end of the turn. So this stops your opponent's effects from going off. Now on to the spells. I run 3 UA Hyper Stadiums. When this card is activated, you can add one UA or FA monster from your deck to your hand, except... monster from your deck to your hand. Or one UA Stadium from your graveyard to your hand. You can reveal one field spell card in your hand and pay 1,000 life points, so you can normal summon one UA or FA monster from your main phase this turn, in addition to your normal summon or set. You can only gain this effect once per turn. You can only activate these once per turn. So this is really good to get another UA monster to your hand, and if you have a field spell in your hand, you can reveal it to get another normal summon this turn. Then I also run 3 UA Stadiums. If a UA monster is normal summoned to your side of the field, you can add one UA monster from your deck to your hand. Once per turn, if a UA monster is spell summoned to your side of the field, all monsters you currently control gain 500 attack. This is a good search engine for the deck, and permanent attack when you spell summon a UA monster. You also want to run 3 UA Signing Deals. Since a lot of the monsters are really high monsters, you can draw a bad hand, but this card will help you get your plays going. Trust me. You spell summon one UA monster from your deck, but its effects are negated and cannot be used for Synchro Exceed material for a summon. And then you lose LP equal to your opponent, equal to that monster's level times 300. You can activate these effect once per turn. That Synchro or Exceed material effect doesn't really bother this deck because you're not really spell summoning cards from your extra deck. But if you would, you can always return it back to your hand with another UA monster. Then return that UA monster to your hand to bring it back so it doesn't have those negative effects on it. But yeah, it's a super good card for the deck. I also run 1 UA Power Jersey. I've seen people not run this, but you can equip only 1 UA. You can equip it to only a UA monster. It gains 1,000 attack and defense. Also, if it battles an opponent's monster, any battle damage inflicted to your opponent is doubled. And if the equipped monster destroys a monster by its attack, it can make a second attack. However, during the end phase, you banish the equipped monster. And if this card is sent to the graveyard because the equipped monster turned to the hand, you return this card to your hand. So, of course, you want to try to return that monster to your hand so you can get this card back so you don't banish your monster during your standby phase. You also want to run 1 UA Turnover Tactics. This card is super good for the deck and is very viable against heavy extra deck plays. So if you control 2 or more UA monsters with different names, shuffle as many monsters on the field as possible into the deck. Then spell summon UA monsters from your deck that have different names from each other, up to the number of cards shuffled into the main deck. But those monsters cannot attack this turn. Then your opponents can spell summon monsters from their deck, up to the number of cards spell summoned into their shuffled into the main deck. So basically, if all they have is extra deck monsters, since they weren't shuffled into the main deck because they go to the extra deck, they can't bring out any monsters. And since all UA monsters are main deck monsters, you're going to be spell summoning and your opponent's not. So if your opponent's board is just a bunch of extra deck monsters, UA turnover tactics can just end the game right there. That's all the UA spells I run. The other spells I run are 3. Pot of Extravagance. Thanks to the structure of Valdez, this card's a little bit easier to get. But at the start of your main phase 1, you can banish 3 or 6 random cards from your extra deck face down. Then draw 1 card for every 3 cards banished. And for the rest of the turn, if there's card resolves, you cannot draw cards by card effects for the rest of the turn. That is fine. You're not really summoning cards from your extra deck with this deck, and this card's super viable for draws and plays. So you want to run 3. I don't need to explain Extravagance that much, but there you go, 3 Extravagance. And shout out to Fox Luna for this tactic and for gifting me this card. 3 Blizzards. You can target 1 face-up spell your opponent controls this turn, negate the activated of that spell, and all spells on the field with that same original name. If the target card would be sent to your opponent's graveyard this turn, it is added to their hand instead. It is a quick play. This stops all problem spells that your opponent could play against you. So I run 3 Blizzards. Thank you for the gift, Fox Luna. I also run 2 Foolish Burial Goods. I send 1 spell or trap card from my deck to the graveyard. I can only activate this effect once per turn. The only spell you really want to send, spell or trap card you want to send to the graveyard is UA Penalty Box. I will show that off in a minute. Alright. 1 Rhoda, so you can add 1 level 4 or lower warrior monster to protect your hand. Of course, 1 Terraforming to add 1 field spell card from your deck to your hand. Alright, now on to the traps. The only traps I run are 2 UA Penalty Boxes. You're not really going to put it on the field, but if you do, at the start of the damage step, if a UA monster battles an opponent's monster, you can banish that opponent's monster to your opponent's second end phase. You can only use this effect of UA Penalty Box once per turn. And you can banish this card from your graveyard to add 1 UA spell card from your deck to your hand. So this is what you use Foolish Burial Goods for. Oh, that's different. This is what you want to use Foolish Burial Goods for. You want to send this to the graveyard from the deck so you can add 1 UA spell card from deck to your hand. If you happen to draw it, you can always use it as discard fodder from Perfect Ace. That's also good. So that is the main deck. I see people run 3 Minefielders, UA Minefielders, and I also seen people run 3 Foolish Burial Goods. I'm just running 2 of each at this point. There's also UA Man of the Match and UA Locker Room. I ran Locker Room before and up to 2, but I'm just running 1 and 1 UA Man of the Match on the side because they're just not very viable. But there could be tactics that you can run as well. And also, like Rival of the Warlords or Gozen Match. Floodgates can also run since they're all warrior monsters and their attributes are all earth monsters. So you can run some Floodgates in here as well to stop your opponent's plays. Alright, so on to the combos. So give me a second to get a decent hand ready for you. It won't be too busted, hopefully. Alright. So let's say you drew a hand. That's 4. Let me get a card here. Here we go. That's 5. Alright, let's say you drew this hand, right? So, you can activate Foolish Burial Goods to send your UA penalty box that you want in your graveyard, so you can banish it from your graveyard, so you can add a UA spell to your hand. If you have Hyper Stadium or the regular Stadium, I'll suggest adding either or if you don't have Terraforming, so you can get the other one in the hand. So, you want to get UA Stadium to your hand. Alright. This is how I would normally play it. Did a lot of test runs online and stuff. But you activate UA Hyper Stadium. Since I don't have any level 4 monsters, I would add one of the level 4s. I'll always add Liberal Spiker to hand if I don't already have it in my hand. And then I would activate the effect to reveal Stadium, so I can get an extra normal summon this turn. Then I'll send that to the graveyard to activate Stadium. So when you normal summon Liberal Spiker, you can add a UA monster. So of course, get your Perfect Case, your Negator. Then return him to your hand to spell summon him. And since you use Hyper Stadium's effect to get an extra normal summon, you'll then normal summon Liberal Spiker to activate Stadium again. So you can add maybe your other Negator, Blockbacker, to return him to your hand and bring out Blockbacker. Right? And since, you know, let's say we happen to draw a UA Signing Deal, we can activate Signing Deal to spell summon a UA monster from your deck. So let's say we want to get Dreadnought Dunker for next turn, right? So we can get Dreadnought Dunker out, right? And, you know, pay some life points. Then return him to your hand to bring out a Liberal Spiker. And this is a decent board to end on. So if your opponent tries to activate effect, you can just negate it, or possibly if they spell summon a monster, you can negate their effects and switch their battle positions. Or if they activate an effect or whatever, you can use this effect to return. If they have a card you can pop, I would use his effect first. To basically I would return him. So if they activate effect, you can discard a card. Let's just discard Rabble Rebounder, and so you can negate some plays. And then if they have a card you want to pop, because you want to try to spell summon this card. If they have a card you can pop, or effects you want to negate that you haven't already negated with Blockbacker. So return him to your hand. So you can reveal this, so you can shuffle that back to bring something else out. Maybe your card that's going to protect your card, so Goalkeeper. And since you spell summon a card during your opponent's turn, or even your turn, you can bring out your Player Manager, so you can pop a card as well. So that's a decent combo hand. Get a bunch of cards, and of course you have your next turn, you know, to make other plays, and then you still have a monster zone to normal summon this, so you can get your add from your field spell. So you can even get your Dreadnought Dunker back, so you can return him since you don't need him anymore, to get him out and switch your powerfuls to attack, since, you know, they're gaining attacks through the stadium. And now you've got another popper on the field as well. And, you know, if you happen to lose any monsters, you still got your Liberal Spiker in your hand. So yeah, that's a little short of how the deck runs. They just take each other out, and they're super viable and very casual. My extra deck is nothing of importance. It's just basically a pot of extravagance fodder. You can kind of run anything. There are some Exceed plays and decent link plays you can run. And since the field spell can search for FA monsters, you can even run Auto Navigator, the tuner, and maybe get some synchro plays in the deck. There's a lot of options you can possibly do with this deck. If you want it more meta, maybe get some imperms in there. Play Stills Effect Failures with Ashes, or add some Ashes. This is a 41 card deck. I couldn't think of anything to take out to make it 40. I just couldn't do it. But this is the deck. I hope you enjoyed this deck profile. And if you do, go ahead and leave a like button and possibly leave a comment as well. But thank you for watching. Have a nice day. Goodbye.